This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Telecom operators in Nigeria are examining the possibility of installing regional tariffs to accommodate the challenges faced by customers in each state across the country. The idea was floated during a stakeholder conference with the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, ALTON, and it could see lower tariffs in states where there is a greater ease of doing business. Joining the conversation this morning is Ade Atobatele, a tech expert. Mr. Atobatele, good morning, and thank you for joining us on this conversation.
Good morning.
So, to start off, what do you make of this proposal by Alton?
Proposal, is it actually, I think it's come to the stage of a proposal. I think it was something that they just discussed as in relation to costs. Of course, at any point in time, any company can look at the ways they're going to manage their costs. I think that it hasn't gone past a discussion stage at the moment. And I think it's going to have a lot of difficulty getting into a formal proposal.
So when you say that there'll be difficulty getting it into a formal proposal, is that because you think some other operators in the space may not agree, or do you think that perhaps the regulator is not likely to approve this?
I don't think that the regulator is going to be party to balkanization of the country. In other words, they're not the regulator is not going to be the one that says, yes, I'm breaking the country up into different regions. It's a one Nigeria approach. It has been so for a very long time, and not just on telecoms, on most things. If you're importing a car and you're taking it to Kano, of course, it's going to be more expensive than selling that car in Lagos. But the regulator doesn't have that capitalistic imperative. He has a social impact imperative, and he has to look at the whole of the nation as one. And therefore, it's just because you have a larger distance, he's not going to victimize you.
So, the Alton chair, when he was discussing this at the event, he essentially said, look, if we implement a regional tariff, it will help that states that make it easier to do business will get cheaper tariffs, while those who make it more difficult would then bear the brunt. And it triggers the conversation around right of way and how a number of states are yet to waive the fees for telecoms providers to kind of expand infrastructure in those areas. Do you think that perhaps this might be a backhanded way of trying to trigger that conversation? Perhaps mosey the states on along?
If you could see my face now, there's this big grin on it, whereby I think it's a negotiating ploy, just as you pointed out. If you don't do this, we will try and do that. And of course, they haven't had much way in negotiating that, because some states see everything as a tax. Everything, rather than sort of finding other ways to do IGR, are the ways that they try to make money. And so these are the places where the telecom companies are finding it difficult and more expensive. I mean, the innovative state will be inviting them in and saying, we'll even pay you, or it's going to be free. But then there are some states that just want to find ways to do IGR, and rather than sort of find other ways to expand their state. And this is where they're suffering. So they're looking for a negotiating ploy to say, well, why should we even be in your state? It's much too expensive to be there. But if you don't do this, it's going to get more expensive. I think it's much more of a negotiating ploy than something that they think is actually going to come to fruition.
You know, at some point last year, or I think this was actually in late 2023, we had the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy float this idea of laying what is 90,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable across the country. Massive investment needed there, somewhere around, I think, $2 billion was what he said would be the cost of just carrying it out. I know this is specific to fiber optic cables, but if the federal government is able to tackle this project and actually deliver it, what sort of impact would we see on the telecom sector? Would they be more willing to use that to their advantage?
The problem has never been the federal government. It has always been state government. The federal government understands that they have to see the country as a whole, as one whole, and I think that putting fiber down federal highways is actually usually very, very cheap and very easy to do. It's of course when you now have to spur off the federal highway and go into a local area where it now becomes a state matter that we now see all sorts of weird and wonderful taxes and all weird and wonderful proposals that they have to do this and they have to do that. You have to bring your mother's head in a crocodile's tooth as well. But it's not the federal government that has a problem. It's the state governments that are just looking for any way to increase the cost of the money in their coffers. So where the minister is saying we want to do this, he intends to do that, and he will give the licensing to allow that federal pipe to go up the federal highway. It's not him that is going to be the problem.
Mr. Atobatele, thank you very much for your time and expertise on this conversation. Ade Atobatele is a tech expert who joined us to speak on a plan, a proposal, if you want, or the beginnings of a proposal by telecom operators in Nigeria to install regional tariffs across the country in order to accommodate the challenges faced by customers and to play on the ease of doing business experienced in different parts of the country. You're still on to Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, your Beyond the News station. We urge you to stay tuned. In a few short moments, we'll continue with our conversations which are lined up for this morning.